everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to talk about bankruptcy for people who are running their own business. If you're self-employed, if you're struggling financially, you're considering bankruptcy, I'm going to talk about 3 very important concepts and things you need to understand about bankruptcy, how it impacts your business, and which chapter is going to be better if you're self-employed. But if this is your first time here to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and click subscribe, check on that bell. That way you'll be notified each and every day when we put out new videos that will help you deal with serious debt problems. All right, if you are self-employed and running a business, you know what? I get it. I've run a business now for over 20 years in the form of my own law practice. I understand the stresses of meeting payroll and covering all the expenses, everything that goes into owning your own business. But if you find yourself in a situation where you're thinking, you know, this just isn't working, I'm going to need to do a bankruptcy filing, it's very important that you take the appropriate steps leading up to it to make sure that you get the biggest bang for the buck, that you actually get the relief that you're looking for. Now, it's important to understand, and I should back up just really quick. One thing that I tell people all the time that, who are worried about bankruptcy or who think the bankruptcy laws in and of themselves are not a good idea, I always say, you know what, without bankruptcy, who would ever take the risk of actually opening your own business? If it's something where you knew that you could never escape liability if the business didn't work, who would do that? You know, that there would be too much risk. So bankruptcy is there for all you people out there who've taken those risks to start your own business and taken those steps, which takes a lot of courage to be able to do. I get that, but bankruptcy can be something that can help you out considerably. But when you're self-employed, filing a bankruptcy has a lot of more moving parts to it. And so I want to discuss, like I said, 3 things that you need to consider if you're self-employed and you're looking to file a bankruptcy. The first thing you need to understand is that you need to have your documents in order. Now, it requires a lot more information when you're self-employed, and having the appropriate documentation in order is going to be vitally important. The first of those documents is tax return. You need to file your tax return. This applies to anybody who's going through bankruptcy, but if you don't have your tax returns current and filed, it's something where you may not even be able to file bankruptcy until you get that done. So even if you owe debt, you're getting a refund, whatever it is, you need to get your business and your personal tax returns filed. Now, I do consultations with people all day long who are behind in filing their tax returns. We can start the process as far as getting everything put together, but I don't like filing the case unless the tax returns are brought current, because it could result in an immediate dismissal of your case. So if you're behind on getting those tax returns filed, meet with your accountant, meet with your CPA, start going through that process of getting your tax returns squared away. You can still talk to a bankruptcy attorney like myself, but you need to be able to get those tax returns done and in order before you jump into the bankruptcy. It's going to make everything go a lot more smooth. And that, whether you're filing Chapter 7, Chapter 13, it doesn't matter. You need to get those tax returns done. Now, that may actually, I might be putting the cart before the horse, as they say a bit. In leading up to that, you also should do regular financial statements. A lot of businesses don't do this, and I get it. Like having an accountant or a bookkeeper, it's an added expense, but it's one that's so important to having your business be successful, or even if it's facing bankruptcy and getting through the dissolution process or the bankruptcy process, is having a monthly financial statement. Now, if you're saying, you know what, hey, that would have been great advice when I started this business, I get that as well. But if you have those financial statements, you ought to start compiling them so that a person like myself, a bankruptcy attorney, could review them in preparing the needed documents for the bankruptcy filing. If you haven't done them up to this point, it's not something where I'm saying go back and redo all the months that you don't have the financial statements. But if it's something you do have them, you need to start putting those together. And then the last thing that I would point out under this first topic, as far as record keeping and documentation, is you want to try and not commingle personal and business expenses and funds. This is probably the number one thing I see that business owners do that could cause problems both in bankruptcy and out, is there's no clear separation of what's a business and what's personal. I see the business bank account statements and people are buying groceries and things that are clearly personal expenses out of the business account. You want to try to avoid that, try to avoid commingling those funds. It doesn't mean that you can't file a bankruptcy case in the event that you have been commingling your business and personal, but it's something that can cause you issues even outside of bankruptcy. There's something called piercing the corporate veil, which can happen outside of bankruptcy, where the lender or somebody who's suing you can actually say, look, the LLC or the corporation you set up, it's really no different than you personally, so we're going to disregard that and come after you personally. Again, that's a non-bankruptcy thing, But it's just kind of a word of warning if you're watching this, not sure if bankruptcy is a good option. Try to not commingle business or personal funds. It's going to make the business run better. It's going to help you make better decisions. And in the event that you have to file for bankruptcy, it's a lot easier to say, look, there is this separate entity, this LLC, this corporation that's separate from you if you're needing to file for bankruptcy. So trying to avoid commingling any type of funds. All right. Now, the second thing that you need to understand, if you are self-employed and filing for bankruptcy, so you're a member of an LLC or a shareholder of a corporation, is that even if you file a personal bankruptcy, not only does it eliminate your personal debts, but it eliminates any personal guarantees you have on business debts. Now, a lot of people who have small businesses, they'll have credit cards and will have their company name on it. You need to really see who's actually liable on that. In most circumstances, it's really, they use your social security number. They may have the business name on it, but it's really a personal debt. Or it may be a business debt with a personal guarantee. So again, you file bankruptcy personally, the personal guarantee gets discharged to that case, but the LLC or the corporation may still be liable for the debt. So you may find yourself going through a Chapter 7 bankruptcy on the personal side. You get rid of all that debt, but then they're sending a letter to your company saying, hey, you're still liable on it. So it's important to understand that the company, the LLC, that entity may still have liability on the debt, even though you filed a personal bankruptcy. That gets a little bit complicated. There's questions, obviously, well, then why would I file for bankruptcy? It's something to talk to a bankruptcy attorney about. I do free consultations on bankruptcy here in the state of Arizona, where you can walk through with an attorney exactly what that's going to look like for your business. So just understanding what's discharged, what's not, who's liable, who's not, that is super important. It's important to understand as well that bankruptcies, and I can tell you this is one of the more misunderstood concepts. Companies, if you want your LLC to file for bankruptcy, it's rare that it does it unless you're doing like a Chapter 11. Chapter 11 bankruptcies are a restructuring or reorganization. They're typically not done for small service-based type businesses. They're very expensive. First of all, I can tell you, like attorney's fees, court costs, we're talking $40,000 to $100,000, depending on the complexity of your case. And so it doesn't make sense in a lot of small businesses for the business entity itself to file a bankruptcy. Now, some small businesses will file Chapter 7. However, businesses in a Chapter 7, which just really is where they liquidate all the assets and pay off any creditors, the business does not get a discharge like an individual would. So if I file for personal bankruptcy, I'm going to get a discharge from the court that says these debts are eliminated. However, if the business files a bankruptcy, the business does not get that discharge. Only an individual does, not the LLC, not the corporation. So those are some things that are important to understand and can get, like I said, kind of complicated. So it's important to talk to your attorney and make sure that you understand fully who's going to be liable after the bankruptcy and who is not, so that you know that you're getting the relief that you're actually hoping for when you go through that process. All right, and then the third thing that I wanted to talk about is really you need to understand and kind of think about which chapter of bankruptcy you're going to file. This is, again, is a point where you need to talk to an attorney. And I should say this, there are people who do bankruptcy on their own. If you're self-employed, you should not be one of those people. It can get complicated and can get really ugly really quick if things aren't done properly. Now, when you file bankruptcy, so if you as a business owner decide, hey, I'm going to file a personal bankruptcy case, your company is not filing for bankruptcy. However, your ownership interest must be disclosed, and it can be considered what's called property of the bankruptcy estate. So, for example, I am a member of the Arizona Consumer Law Group. That's the LLC that I am a member of, that I own that entity. If I am filing a personal bankruptcy, my company is not filing bankruptcy, but I have to disclose that I am an owner of that company and disclose my ownership interest. Now, that can be an issue, particularly if your business has a lot of assets. So let's say you owned a plumbing company and you had a fleet of trucks, a bunch of really expensive equipment, things like that. That can be an issue because a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, a trustee can step into your shoes as owner of the business and can liquidate assets. So you can see really quickly this can become a big issue. Now, for most service-based businesses, it's not that big of an issue. If you do something like web design or something like that, and the extent of your equipment is maybe a laptop, it's kind of like a law firm. Really, we just have a couple computers and some desks, and that's about it. But if you have significant assets, it's important to know that Chapter 7 bankruptcy may not be a good option for you personally. you may want to look at a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. Chapter 13 bankruptcies, you're not going to lose any of the assets. The company can continue to operate. However, it's going to be a much longer process. You're going to have to pay some of the debts back. But typically for self-employed people, particularly of a kind of a mid-sized business, you're going to be looking at likely a Chapter 13 rather than a Chapter 7. So I know that gets a little bit complicated, but those are the 3 points I really wanted to discuss when it comes to self-employed people filing for bankruptcy, what relief it does offer, what relief it doesn't offer, and just some different ways to navigate and things to start thinking about as you're getting ready to go through that process, particularly when it comes to documents, tax returns. Those are super important to get done, is to get those tax returns caught up and put a lot of effort and some of your energies and resources into getting those caught up if you're behind. So if you are in the state of Arizona and you'd like the free consultation to talk about exactly what I talked about today, my information is below. Feel free to click on that, set up a call. You'll talk with me directly, and we can kind of walk through whether this is a good option or not. Thanks for watching today.